Welcome back to the Wolf of Country podcast. Today on the show, Ash Parmar, a local Waikato business owner that's been in the industry for over 20 years, running liquor and retail stores. Also become very vocal over the last couple of years on our current government or on the government around the retail issues we're seeing around crime, ram raids, and trying to make a difference to our community. And has just recently been appointed or announced as an ACT candidate for the New Zealand general elections that is about 2 months away. And I thought I've always followed Ash on LinkedIn, as been such a big person that's vocal out there to try to make a change in our community around the crime, our mental health epidemic in New Zealand. And I thought it'd be a great time to get you on the show, Ash, and we'll have a little chat about yourself and what you're trying to achieve in politics. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me.
So obviously, you just newly announced, ACT candidates. I think it was just over a week ago by the time of this recording when it was done.
3 weeks today.
Yeah, 3 weeks today on the recording.
Yeah.
You went on the tour bus, as they were said last week. We was just speaking off air, how crazy and all the rest of it. But I think the big thing for a lot of people out there at the moment is a simple one. Is fundamentally is who is Ash? Who are you and what is your story? Because a lot of people might not necessarily be on the LinkedIn world like I am. Yeah. So to see a lot of where you communicate. So talk me through a little bit of who's Ash.
So I grew up in New Delhi in India. Moved here with my parents and my brother in 2001. And the whole time since 2001, we've stayed living in Hamilton. Mm-hmm. So I've only ever lived in two cities. New Delhi, which is, I don't even want to guess, I think 20 million. Who knows, maybe 40 million or 50 million people. But obviously living in Hamilton, when we moved there, Hamilton was quoted as 80,000 people. Yeah. So it was a big change, going from bustling metropolis to Hamilton, which at the time felt really quiet. Yeah. But obviously Hamilton is just an amazing growth. And it's almost doubled in population in the 22 years we've lived there. So moved there in 2001, all me and my brother really knew was that New Zealand plays cricket, which was a big tick for me. And my brother, they play cricket. I think we can find our way there. And that's exactly what we did. My brother went to high school. I went to uni and played a lot of cricket, made some friends. And life's been largely very good in Hamilton. Yeah.
And, so obviously your family's got into the retail industry, liquor stores. I don't know, the numbers of how many behind that, but you've also launched recently a couple of years ago an online e-commerce sort of whiskey online store and everything else. Yeah. But talk me through the family business and the liquor stores. How did that happen?
So punfully intended, we are those Indians that bought a dairy when we came here. So my parents owned a dairy in Dinsdale, in sort of east side of Hamilton. Mum and dad kind of had it for 3 years, and I was kind of bouncing around Waikato uni, not really doing much. And they asked, in 2004, what if we bought a liquor store in Huntley? And would you come work for us? And I said, yeah, I think I can work in a liquor store. And then we've had that store the entire time, coming up 19 years in just under 2 months. Oh, wow. So just keep working in the same store. And obviously, since then, we've set up, bought, and sold many stores. But currently, we're down to 4 stores. So liquor is all I've done as an adult to sell. It's a fascinating industry. People need it in happiness and sadness. It plays an important role in everyone's lives. And it's been thoroughly rewarding, because it's not a boring subject. It's a very fun subject. Everyone wants to talk about beer, wine, spirits, and all that kind of stuff. In terms of online store, there's a long journey from 2004 for 2017 when I achieved a lot. I was on the board of Super Liquor, which is New Zealand's biggest chain at the time, and done a lot of other stuff as well. And in 2017, I found myself to be quite depressed and bored, being stuck in the shop, that brick and mortar setup. Wake up in the morning, go to the same thing again and again. So I spoke to a lot of people, hey, what do I do? Do I just leave the family business? Do I go find a job somewhere? I want to learn more skills. That was the most important thing. I want to learn something else, meet new people. So a very good dear friend of mine, Glenn Marvin, who you know him from LinkedIn. So I got all this different advice, but Glenn actually sat me down and said, hey, why do you want to throw all your knowledge and more importantly, contacts you've built in the liquor industry for such an incredibly long time? Why don't you use that to your advantage and start an online business? And you've always said to me, you like premium whiskey and you like getting in front of people.
Hey everyone, sorry for the interruption. Just a quick shout out from our sponsors.
My name is Kenyon Clark and I'm the founder of the Duval Group. We are a large-scale property developer, and alongside our property development business, we also have our gym business based in Manukau and with new locations opening soon. We're passionate about serving our community, and we do that through the Duval Foundation, and I hope that we are able to be a voice of encouragement and inspiration for a whole new generation of entrepreneurs.
Let's get back to the show.
So that kind of came out of nowhere, and we started it, and it's been a huge success, and it was supposed to be just an online store. We make something available. Initially, I would do some live videos. Hey, here's a whiskey, here's a gin, try it, or maybe don't try it. It's up to you. But then one day someone asked me, do you want to do a whiskey tasting? And that became a huge part of the business. It was never sort of written down on a piece of paper, one day I'll start doing whiskey tastings. But I do them in my unique way, and they've been hugely successful. And that's what brought me, I guess, the initial following on LinkedIn. People were just so happy to see a young entrepreneur talking about whiskey with such a passion. Whiskey has this stigma around it, which I think is unnecessary, because we're all adults and we should all consume, within our own capacity. But it's just the flavors and smells of whiskeys that I love deciphering and helping other people understand, hey, this is what you're tasting. This is what you should be smelling. And that's been really, really satisfying. Yeah.
I was talking to a guy just last week about, it would be amazing, today's episode wouldn't cater for it, but sitting down and have a whiskey and cigar, session as a show. I've been wanting to do it for ages as part of my brand, but I just don't know if it'll come across the right way. Sitting here with whiskeys and cigars. I ran a short podcast series a couple of years ago. It was called the Teenage Mutant Ninja Talkers, and it was about guests that were born in the 80s that understood the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and we had to sit there, weren't allowed to talk business, and it was a glass of whiskey and a cigar, and we had to talk about our youth and our toys and all that sort of stuff, and it's one of those cool things, and I appreciate the understanding. Myself, I enjoy a little bit of whiskey. I'm more of a vodka guy. So if you got the vodka taste on that side, so the palate's totally different. But yeah, totally. But that's cool. But look, I didn't actually bring you in here to talk about the whiskey side. I would love to know the rest of it.
We can do like a 4-hour podcast. I can bring some whiskeys.
Yeah, totally. We do that on the next time. But the main thing I want to bring about is, we'll get into it, is, about your story and leading up to, the ACT candidate. There was a real interesting comment you said there about, you launched the online store of 2017, finding yourself a bit, how would I say, bored and, not sure about life. I'm sure how we find society today in the retail industry, I'm sure you'd wish you could go back to 2017 when it was almost boring and nothing was happening. Because talk me through sort of off, say, 2019, 2020, get into COVID. Talk me through what we've seen the last couple of years. So a lot of the audience might be coming in over from overseas and stuff. Yeah. What have we seen in the retail industry, especially also in the liquor side, around the crime and the ram raids that we've seen almost every week? Or there was a stage, it was almost every day.
So like on the tour that I've been on, just 3 days, we did 7 events. So what I've been saying to people is, and this is based more on Hamilton, obviously that's where I kind of have more of the contacts, but it was a nationwide thing. So 2018, 2019, we saw an intense rise, very particularly in aggravated robberies, because tobacco prices had been going up because of the legislation, and it was incredibly profitable for some G-banger to just run in, hit someone over the head and take, say, 17 grams worth of tobacco, and it's quite easy to flick off. If you were to, say, steal $10,000 worth of bed sheets, it's going to be quite hard, not a commodity everyone wants. So tobacco was in great demand, and that was on back of the prison reduction stuff that came out in 2017 under the current government. And it was a clear message to people who were doing crime, hey, because there's a level of crime, you do murder, you do this and that, but kind of aggravated robbery got pushed down the line a little bit, as in, it's okay, it is what's happening. So a lot of that was happening in 2018, 2019. If you like, I can give you some links to articles that sort of go to it. You sort of get to a point in September 2019. So all the crime was happening. The government of today was trying to respond in their own way. And one of the things they wanted was, and this is one of the products that I hate the most, are fog cannons. So there's an article from September 2019 of Stuart Nash, who was a police minister then, celebrating a milestone of 500th fog cannon being installed. And I'll come back to that later. So all of that was happening. So what I'm saying to people is only one thing stopped all of these aggravated robberies, and it was not the police, it was not the government or the justice system. It was literally COVID-19.
Yep.
The shops were suddenly closed. One day in March, everything shut down. And for many weeks, months, everything was shut down. And life sort of came back to it. But life came back in a unique way. We were under level 3.
Yep.
So you weren't necessarily going into your liquor stores, dairies, and all that kind of stuff. And there was a lot more restriction.
Yep.
There was a heightened sense of security. So a lot of that was...
The awareness was there, and it was a lot less numbers right through the door control.
But then one morning, some young fella, I don't know where, in Auckland, Hamilton, woke up, stole a 2-ton car, saw a glass window, and it's like, I'm just going to drive right through it. I don't understand why we're doing robberies or why we're beating someone up. We can just steal a car, which is very low on the crime sort of level, and we'll steal 3 of them. Why not? We'll ram the shop, the ram rate. We'll ram the shop of 1, and we use the other 2 to fill the loot in, and we'll run away. So the ram rate started, and in sort of the end of 2020, throughout 2021 and 2022, we saw a massive escalation in ram rates, which, again, current government was trying to kind of push it down as like, oh, no, these are just kids, these are small crimes. But they've had a profound effect on the people involved in it. And these are not necessarily just the people who work in the shop. It's the communities as well.
Yep.
The older people, the people who might be, may have a disability. They rely on a dairy or a local store. But when they've been ram-raided, obviously, sometimes it takes a day or 2, sometimes weeks to get the store back up to their level.
It's so true. There's a couple of things I just want to go back on just for an audience that might know a lot about this. So just to a wider audience that's not aware, in New Zealand, we have exceptionally high alcohol and tobacco prices.
Yeah.
The reason why it's been pushed like that is the government pushes it up and increases tax. They use it as a tax claim. Now, look at full props. It's ways that they tax on the one side. They don't have to tax us on the other side. But what it means, it does come to a piece that a commodity that's easily tradable becomes of high value.
Yeah.
So, for example, I don't even know what it is. It's like at the moment, I think a standard pack of cigarettes is $30 over the counter.
$32.50.
Yes, yeah, $32.50 New Zealand dollars. You're talking what? Low 20s USD if you're coming over from overseas for a pack of smokes. So if you think of it, if you get in and get yourself a 20-pack carton or grab a handful, there's $500. There's $1,000 literally from that, and being able to move it today, tomorrow. Same with alcohol, right? Alcohol prices that go up every year at the moment. I can't remember what the minimum on a litre price is. Isn't it 30s, somewhere around there? Higher than $30 a litre minimum, right? So you're starting to get this issue that all of a sudden easy tradable consumables of a high value, so therefore you want to drive it across. And you're so true about the understanding of there's a crime that is now no longer punished due to the government seeing that way, and therefore if I perform a crime to give myself a high return, the worst thing I'm going to get is almost a slap on the wrist. And that's the challenging part as a society we see today. And I think what you're saying is the impact of these ram raids on the community. It's not just necessarily the community on the shop. It's the community as a whole as New Zealand, right? I'm born and raised in South Africa to my early 20s. Left that country seeing crime and violence like you wouldn't want to believe. And I'm sitting here and I'm speaking to a few friends and going, man, it's not to be really bad about it, but it feels like home. It feels like South Africa, right? Yeah. Don't want to say home. New Zealand's my home now, but it feels like back in South Africa in some moments. And it's so detrimental to society as a whole. Yeah. And I'd love to know your thoughts, Ash, on, like you said, it's impacting the community, but what more detriment does it do? Not just the perception and acceptance of violence, but also the mental health impact we see, right?
So one thing I just want to touch on very quickly, so the message is not lost, because I know you've got a very big audience overseas as well. The issue is not, and the government tried very hard to make it sound like it's an issue of some kids trying to steal or some adults trying to steal tobacco, and then now there's a chat of removing tobacco from dairies and liquor stores, which is more on the health case. But you live here, and just sitting here right now, have a guess how many Michael Hill jewelry stores have been robbed.
Oh, yeah. I don't know the number, but I know it's
big
number. Yeah.
So, and that's where directly before getting into politics, I was doing obviously a lot of media out on my own back. I had no formal training. Had my own way of speaking the thoughts, my own way of deciphering the situation. So I desperately tried to highlight in the media that, hey, the government's trying to tell you it's just the dairies getting robbed or the liquor stores for the tobacco. But it was a lot of other stuff as well. And stealing the diamonds and the gold is not an easy product to flick off. And it was happening in its hundreds, to the point Michael Hill started shutting some of the stores down. And other products as well, like, in the Waikato. Have you heard of a product called Stihl? Stihl? They sell chainsaws and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, correct.
So they were getting hit a lot, And again, just take a moment to think about retail as an experience.
Correct.
Right? And that's where the mental health thing I can bring back in for you. So retail experience is just not for the customers. It's also for the people who work there. Kiwis have grown up in a society, because I grew up in New Delhi, India as well. So I'm used to those grilled shops and all that kind of stuff, or even having a gunman outside, depending on the value of the product you have. But Kiwis have grown up in an experience where, for starters, there's no closed doors. A dairy, a liquor store, retail shop, the doors are always open. The front is glass. You may have some kind of branding, depending on the dairy. It'd be Women's Weekly, or if it's a liquor store, it'd be Jim Beam or whatever. Or if it's a high, sort of foot traffic store, or Bunnings or whatever, they would have their products. But that creates that welcoming, hey, come here, shop today. Give me your money and I'll give you some service. That's what's part of it, But in Hamilton East, and I've been driving around Auckland the last couple of days as well, a lot of these shops have got to put cages in front of them. And in Hamilton East in particular, where I've stood for ACT, as a candidate, it was very specifically to highlight the fact you got to go through a double cage door system. So you are not just being socially, but also racially being profiled. That's the sad part of it. So you're going through this double stage door, but even after that, the retailers are working behind a third cage, which has been put on the counters. So when I don't have to go talk to these people. I know these people. A lot of them are family. So when you ask them, you go, you already got a double cage system. Why is there a third layer? And said, because sometimes when I profile these people, they've come in the shop, they look really normal, but they still present a weapon and start attacking me. So I've got this third layer now. And how ridiculous that is, Lawrence. It's for you and I as migrants, we've seen a different side of things. We've come here and go, wow, this is really cool. We love this. We want to accept it. We want to raise our families here. We want to make friends, play sports. But now we've got this ridiculous situation, and I've sort of laid the framework for you. Retail experience, service deliverably. But for someone like me, like if I work in the Hunley store, I have not installed the cage. We probably should have. We were hatched 4 weeks ago yet again. But I refuse to work behind the cage, because an analogy I give to people is when we go to the zoo, we lock up all the dangerous animals in the cage, and we, the humans, are outside. So that's how we keep ourselves safe. But here, the roles are reversed. The normal people are being caged up inside these retail stores, and the dangerous criminals are running around in the community. And they're hurting the community in unique ways as well. So,
it is so true. Looking at it, it's, the cage, the putting up cages, people don't realize the impact to mental psyche, your person, and just a community, right? That anyone that's ever been been around or been part of the prison scene will understand the emotional state around a cage door or the sound of a door closing. And I can tell you that there is such a negative impact and a trigger around anything like that. And one of the things that you mentioned as well, which people don't understand, is we are now having a time in society where we're expecting our community to profile others. That's dangerous. That's a dangerous place to go down, right? I'm coming from a country that was raised on profiling and raised on race challenges and problems to this day. We've seen over in the American space where people are profiled, publicly acknowledge that they're profiled and are checked, and we can see in the last few years across the US how bad that has gone. And now we are coming to a community and a country supposedly the safest in the world, and we're asking people, or they've been forced now for someone to walk through the door and go, I have to profile you because I'm scared of what's going to happen, and then all the rest of it. And it's just going to make this rip in society further than it is, because when we get into a society where we've got a profile, the easiest way to profile up front, and it always will be that way, will be race.
Of course.
Right? And then all of a sudden, we're just going to have this race divide, even larger than it is at the moment, and this unacceptance of one race to the other that can just not be great for the country, right?
Nah, definitely not. But also, I'll try and bring another aspect to it. So hypothetically, you work in a dairy or a liquor store, wherever you work, where you've got these kind of things. You're waking up in the morning and thinking, I'm going to go to work. I'm going to lock myself up. So your guard is already up. You're quite tense. The first customer comes in, right? He or she may be of a certain look, certain ethnicity. You come in, your guard is up. You're not going to give a good retail experience. But the other thing is you're constantly looking at CCTV. That's what I found myself doing after the aggravated robbery I was a part of. I constantly found myself looking at CCTV, but also constantly scanning the car park. And then that profiling thing comes in. Okay, those two people are walking. That guy's got a mask up. Why does he have a mask up? This and that. And it starts to play in your head a little bit too much. And that impacts on relationships, because you are friends with people in community. You play sports with them. And it starts to reflect on that. And that creates to social division even more. One other thing I want to highlight to you is, not this Sunday, 2 Sundays ago, I took 2-3 hours, obviously campaigning, but went to 4 or 5 dairies in Hamilton East, and spoke to some of the people that I've known that work in these double cage, triple cage, it's like, I don't know if you watched WWE, it's a triple threat situation, It's like 1, 2, 3, and he's still coming, banging. But you look at these people, and they've been through a lot. One person I want to highlight in particular. So the first day I was in New Zealand, my uncle, the puns of writing themselves, Indians, we have so many dairies. My uncle literally had a dairy in Hamilton East called MJ Dairy. So I landed at Auckland Airport with my mum, and that's where we went straight away. My brother and my dad had moved here a little while before. And the first day was just beautiful. I ate my first pie, which was brutal because I didn't know what I'm eating, and all the gooey stuff all over my clothes, all over my shoe. And I was like, what's going on? Why is there gooey stuff in this pie? We had a game of cricket. It was a beautiful day. But now if you go to the shop, Lawrence, it's got that triple threat situation happening. And the owner, who I don't want to name, he was brutally attacked in 2018 during that big wave. That's when he installed the triple threat sort of thing, the cage thing. And you speak to him, he still smiles. After everything he's been through, he still smiles. You know why? Because he wants to make money for his family. And shouldn't we be celebrating and respecting and somehow making that greater than the needs of some criminals? Because what's happened under the current government, and actually, look, I have time for it. Hey, we got to look into what's making people do the crime. It's a very important question that needs to be explored. But I personally believe, and why I've entered politics now, is the needs of the victims have to come up as well, especially in a society when they are contributing dollars to the tax pool. They are literally risking their lives, their personal well-being, going to a place of work, creating a service and creating money for the taxpayers, So we got to start to think that way. What are we going to make this person who's done maybe 4 ram raids or 5 aggravated robberies? Is that person's needs currently as high as this person's, who even after all the attacks is still going to work, trying to create wealth and give service to community, And I highlighted to you, it's quite easy to say, oh, well, it's a dairy, who cares, we'll just shut it down. No, people who live within that 1-2 kilometer vicinity, they rely on it. And these are our pensioners. These are our people with disabilities. They need those little things. And also people sort of, roaming around in general, but they provide an important service. And that person's profit is paying for a family. They are putting the kids through school, through college, all that kind of stuff. So we got to respect that. And we got to sort of try to find a way to make that a bigger part of conversation than the needs of people who think somehow stealing something is acceptable or hurting someone is acceptable.
It's so true. And I can hear off the back of this is I can imagine that's the main reasons why you got into the politics. Let's get into that bit, and we'll come back into where you want to go and change the direction quickly. Did you put your hand up, or did someone tap you on the shoulder about maybe jumping into politics?
So I can talk you through it. We're all aware of that unfortunate moment when Janak Patel was murdered, not so far from here, actually. And 2 years prior
So just to let the audience know, just a dairy owner that got attacked. I'm getting my timing wrong now. Was it last November last year? Yeah. Yes, and it hit the country pretty hard.
Yeah, and it didn't surprise anyone. It was like 1,000 steps kind of led to this moment. You know, a lot of other attacks were happening, all that kind of stuff, and it sort of got to it. And then suddenly the country just stood up and go, "Whoa, we've hit that tipping point now. Someone's been murdered."
Yep.
And me, another retailer, Manish Tucker, who has been doing amazing stuff in the media. Even before me, he kind of encouraged me to start to talk about needs of the retailers and all that kind of stuff. We organized this big protest in Hamilton, you know, which was very raw emotions. You know, you can imagine 200, 300 people, everyone owns a liquor store. And I made the speech there. And I started by saying to everyone, hey, everyone who's been robbed or ramraded, you know, can you put your hand up? Obviously, all 200-300 people put their hand up. And I said, well, keep your hand up. And if you've been ramraded or robbed more than twice in the last 6 months or 12 months, put your hand up. Everyone's got their second hand up, you know?
Correct.
And what I learned that day was there was a lot of politics happening. You know, people from National, people from Labour, people from ACT were there, you know? And everyone was so keen to get in front of a mic like this because I had a mic that I was talking from. A lot of people were making very passionate speeches.
Yeah.
These are retailers. And then people from Labour and National made a speech. And I went over to, because the by-election in Hamilton West was happening.
Correct.
At the time. So politics
was big.
It was like, I don't know, I want to be careful what I say, but it was like the perfect moment, you know, by-election happening. The whole of country was watching Hamilton.
Because it is, just as a second here, just with the by-election, it was a seat, right? And it wasn't guaranteed. There was the possibility. And just to everyone else again, you know, we're running under a Labour majority at the moment. So any potential for a national or different party to take a seat off before general elections would be big. A big thing. And that's why that Hamilton West was, you know, it was quite big, yeah.
So everyone's doing politics. And Dr. James McDowell from ACT, he's a current list MP. And he's a person I've known previously in life. I went to him and I said, hey, do you want to make a speech? You know, do you want to say some words? And he said, and that really hit me hard. He said, I'm here to listen and engage with people, not here to make a speech. And I was like, whoa, he's a politician, you know, and I'm only a 3-week-old politician. Even I want the mic, you know. And he said, no, I'm here to listen. And that's what exactly he did. He did that. And then a lot of other protests happened, you know, a lot of things happened. And what James said to me had a profound effect on me, not only about what he's like a person, but the party and the values he represents, you know. And then I kind of dabbled a bit, you know, became a member and then sort of left it alone. And a lot of things were still happening. And then we got to another critical moment in January in Hamilton. The dairy worker lost his fingers.
Yes.
So I was already, because of the crimes I've been victim of, and then unfortunately Janak was murdered. And at this time, Nabeen lost his fingers. I was there within 15 minutes of it happening. The owner rang me and he said, look, you need to come. I don't know what's happening. You know, things are going really, really bad. But things settled a bit. But a day later, we learned that Nabeen and his wife lost their first child. She was pregnant. And that really cut all of us very deep. Not just me as an Indian, not just the retailers, but the whole community. You had hundreds and hundreds of people turning up to the dairy, leaving cards, leaving flowers, leaving cash in envelopes. Hey, can you please give this to the family? You know, I don't know what's going to happen to the next. He's lost his hand. She's lost a child, all that kind of stuff. And I started a Give a Little page because people just didn't have a way to channel. Because you know, you and I know, we've been here long enough. Kiwis love giving money, especially when things get hard. That's what we do. We're very generous. And if there's a Give a Little page, it gives people an opportunity not to just give the $5, $10, but to write a message. And these messages were really, really beautiful. So that happened in January, and that had even more profound effect on me. And I was talking to a lot of the friends and family. Hey, what am I doing? You know what? I'm speaking all the stuff in media. It's getting a lot of attention. The general public is looking and go, oh, here's an Indian guy from Hamilton. He makes a lot of sense. But from March onwards, I approached the party and I said, look, I actually would like to be a candidate. If you think I have the skills, or if you think, you know, the issues I'm talking about are important, which obviously are important to the party. So I had to go through a bit of a process to, I guess, this, you know, stuff you got to do in the background. So I've been very quietly just pursuing it because I'm not a politician. I'm a retailer. I'm an entrepreneur. I can speak my truth very well. Like the whiskey tastings was And I did hundreds of them, got in front of lots of people. I can speak, I can hold attention. But just like I've said to you now, the crime has impacted my life in a way. It's almost forcing me to use all of those business skills to not put it into a political way, Here's the problem, here's how we fix it, and this is who is being hurt along the way.
It's so true. Just a bit of a quick funny question. When you had to sit to become a candidate, do they do that like House of Cards things where they get the guy that comes down and goes, "Tell me all your secrets," and then they start writing it down and going, "That might be a problem later. That one might be a problem later." Do you have to be like audited?
So personally, I'm a massive House of Cards fan. Yeah. So I've seen it 7-8 times. Yeah. So maybe that played a part in it. But I think you and I both know New Zealand is not that kind of politics. Yeah.
Like I thought I'd just ask.
It's pretty chill here. Obviously, they want you to tell them
disclose,
what you've been up to.
Yeah.
And then I'm pretty sure they look into you. I'm pretty sure they look into your past. I'd be surprised if they're not. You know, and you don't want secrets that are going to sort of embarrass the party, but also embarrass yourself. So I'm sure they go through all of that process. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. One thing that's interesting about yourself, Ash, is you've been around a couple of years. Like I said, I've seen your stuff, everything online about what you stand for, and it's an interesting one now that you have at a later age gotten yourself into politics to try and make a change, and it's one of those states where we see in history politicians try to do that and do the right reason and build up from that, right? Compared to someone's naturally they would have gone into politics from a young age, got straight into school, varsity, political degree, went in, helped in the offices, and then found their way into it, and always been in the political scene, but never been, in a weird way, never been in the society scene. Right, have never been in the scene for 20 years and seen what it is to be on the grind and the impact of society and all of the rest of it, and then finally go, I've had enough. Like this is enough. And in a weird way, I had a question to my wife last week. I asked my wife last week that it's been nagging me. I want to stand for local elections where I stay. And she just turned around to me and she goes, I will support you when you do. Just give it another 20 years. We've got young kids and stuff, and she's just like, we're just so busy in the rest of it. So it's starting to get in the back of my mind again as a migrant coming over into one of the, a beautiful country and all the rest, and just seeing, where things are going. And it's like, man, we need to make a change. Yeah. And this is where it gets into an interesting one. And a question I've got for you, Ash, before we get on to what you're standing for, representing under ACT, is what's your thoughts on the society looking at, let's say, ACT as, because you're standing for ACT as a party, or looking at ACT or Ash as a person within a party? Because we get this challenge right now. I'm trying to make the question a bit more clear. Is we get this challenge of you either vote to a certain color. In New Zealand it's by colors. It's red, blue, yellow, black, and then you got green. Right. I'm sorry for the smaller parties if I missed you. You can shout at me later. But that's fundamentally the five. I think it is the five main colors. So you either vote to a color or you vote to a person. Now yourself, you've obviously come up through the scene, and you're a lot more people know about you and everything else. Are your thoughts patterns that you're going to build up a following through Ash, or you're going to build up a following as it's been ACT?
So for me, and this is what I've said from day one, you don't need to follow me or the party, right? What you've got to follow is the policy. And this is the critical mistake New Zealanders have always made. We're actually genuinely too naive. And I've been living here for 22 years, and I keep one eye on Indian politics, which can be very toxic sometimes. We don't want to get to that level. But what I've been saying to people, and and this is for your listeners' benefit, and anyone who's listening down the line as well, I have very specifically followed a path into ACT Party because I made my peace with the policies first. I sat down for a long time when I was thinking, hey, who's going to bring the change? Because it's not going to be the current government. They've put their cards on the table and say, look, crime is how it is, and we're going to make it more about the criminals. And that's okay. That's, it's a democracy. They got 50% of power, and now they're using it. But for me, I looked at, what is National doing, what is Greens doing, what is ACT doing. And for me personally, very specifically, it was the policies. And if you look into what policies have come in since I've been part of ACT as well, there are more policy coming which are more victim-centric. And this is crime stuff, obviously, we're talking about. We're not going into other policies. So me, very particularly, I've been trying to highlight the fact, here's the policies that I have made my peace with. I think these are going to work. We've got to work to create the political pressure to get some of them across the line. I understand not everything's going to change, but if 4 of these 8 things or 12 things change, it will at least calm things down a little bit, but also send a clear message to the criminals, hey, there's a change here now, and you can't get away with what you've been doing, and the needs of the victims are more important. So that comes with the funding thing and all that kind of stuff. So one other thing I want to just talk to you about, to show you how naive I was at the start of this all. At some point in January, I went on YouTube and I searched how to enter politics. It's like, why not? YouTube's got great content, and I've uploaded whiskey reviews to YouTube. So sure, people find my content the same way. How do I drink certain whiskey? So I came across this video from Jordan Peterson. I haven't really heard a lot of him. I've heard bits and pieces when friends have forwarded to me. And this little 5-minute clip turned up of one of his recordings, which were actually done in Auckland on one of his tours, I think in 2018, 2019. And I'm not going to go to the whole video, but he very specifically said the words, what do you know? What do you actually know? What have you done? If you've come out of uni, you've got a degree in hand, all that kind of stuff, you want to jump into politics, yeah, but it's not going to help anyone. But what do you know? What do you stand for? And that's when I kind of realized, I've done something for a long time. I know what effect policy, and I go back to policy, what effect policies are having on life. The current government under the lady who's not the prime minister anymore, people were buying too much into the persona, the celebrity status, the colors, like you said. But people are not looking at policy. And this is why when I told you all the aggravated robberies that were happening in 2018, 2019, they were directly on the back of a policy in 2017 by current government that we're going to reduce the prison numbers. Which at the time, no one was paying attention to it. Us retailers were. We're like, whoa, this is not good. You've made cigarettes and alcohol expensive, and you're not going to send people to jail. Are you going to tell me that youth crime is not a problem, even though it's gone up 492% via the RAM rates? So Kiwis need to wake up this election and look at the policy. What are the people saying about their policy? What are they promising to change? But also then holding them to account. You can spend a lot of time talking about the current government, what they have not achieved. But one thing they've achieved is actually overachieved this. And this is a stat David Seymour was saying at one of the meetings is they actually say we're going to reduce the prison population by 30%, but they've gone and reduced it by 40%. So they've actually overachieved one stat, where there's been failures in other parts. So, yeah.
So we've, Ash, we've spent sort of the last 35, 40 minutes, talking about you as an individual and your story and everything else. I know that from the audience will go, okay, great. Now tell me, if you got in, if ACT got those couple of percent points more required to bring you into it. I know you talk about policies, but let's go into it a little bit of what would you represent to the community as a ACT MP or the rest of it, if you've got to cross the line, because that's what would be a lot of the audience were going, great, Ash sounds reasonable and everything else. What do you stand for? I know we talk about we should look at policies, but we still have that a society that still looks at you as an individual and what you stand for to help support them make those decisions. So what, as Ash and ACT, what is your, let's say, your 2 or your 3 key things that you want to represent or be seen or known for as your push?
So let's talk from maybe COVID-19 onwards. So if you think from March 2020 onwards, I'm a firm belief that the current setup, the government or society as a whole, is not looking at small business. If you look at from the lockdowns, I was actually very vocal on LinkedIn about the fact liquor stores, your small grocery shops, your butchers, florists, all of us were shut down and people were queuing up in the thousands at the supermarket. When you say, if there's a threat of a virus, surely you want people to spread out, not queue up, and touching everything and all that kind of stuff. So from there on, if you look at a lot of the stuff that's happening under current government, they're not empowering small business. So that's something in particular I have a keen interest in. And in my mind also, there's a lot of different definitions of it. Like MBIE have their own sort of thresholds. This is small business, this is medium and all that kind of stuff. But in my opinion, small business is 5 to less staff. So you got mom and dad and maybe 2-3 staff and less than $2 million turnover, way less than that.
Yeah.
So these are the people who have gone and said, hey, I'm going to take a risk. I'm not going to go work for someone else. I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to take a loan maybe. I'm going to employ a couple of people and we're going to make a little bit of money. So we've got to find ways to empower these people. We've got to look at legislation. How are we going to bring more dollars through these people's tills instead of sending it more into the big box stores, and I'm sure you're a consumer yourself. You kind of understand it as well. It's getting far too easy to just go to a big box store, and they serve a good purpose as well. They bring some goods to the country, but we just got to balance the equation. In terms of security, this is the main, if you look at from ACT perspective, the 3 things we're looking at is crime, core governance, and cost of living. So we've got to look at crime's perspective, If we can't protect these businesses, we can't protect these people, and the community comes into it as well, it sets us up for such a failure. A lot of stuff has gone into talking about productivity of a nation. So I was ram-raided, stolen from one of my stores 4 weeks ago. I can't even imagine right now and sort of come up with a number, but at least 60 hours of my own work has gone into it, right? And you know how productive I am. So 60 hours of my stuff has gone into it. Then you got to think about the police people, the insurance people, the community that came and helped me, help clean up the shop, all that kind of stuff. These are wasted hours. This kind of stuff doesn't make a country great. We're wasting our money, not making productive stuff, not making money for the country, not money for ourselves, but also we're taking time away from our own families. We're spending a lot of time talking about criminals, maybe they didn't have a good upbringing, maybe the father or the mother wasn't there. But that's happening here as well. If a retailer is going to spend 60 hours every time a crime happens to solve those issues, they're not being productive, they're not helping the business, but also their family's suffering as well. And the third one is cost of living, right? We can decipher it many, many ways, but a lot of the government's action, very particularly around immigration, our COVID restrictions lasted a lot longer than a lot of the other countries, has had a deep impact on the supply chains. You can say stuff coming in, stuff going out, all that kind of stuff. And immigration has been a big problem. If you look at the smaller level, your $2 million and under, the 2-3 star people, we've seen an increase in minimum wage. Again, not based on productivity. We've just found a piece of paper one day, it just crossed the last number and just added new dollars to it. What does that help with? Because the people who maybe got a $1.50 pay rise, you got to sit them down maybe for a podcast and ask them, did you actually get to keep any of this money? No, they didn't. Everything just went up with it. And obviously now our food prices, our petrol prices are going so much. So these are the things that me as a person, and I'm not just a guy who wants to paddle a bit of alcohol. I still have 2 kids. I have a wife. I have a mortgage. I have a marriage to protect as well. So I'm deeply entrenched in many things that affect an average Kiwi, and we've got to protect these things, we've got to take this country forward here.
It's so true. So, let me just take it back. Small business only empowering, obviously, crime that's going across our society and the cost of living, right?
Yeah.
I just want to go back to a couple of these points and a few more questions on you on this, Ash. Obviously on the crime, that's a big one at the moment. Let's talk through, if you're willing and happy to talk through, what your thought patterns. Obviously, we know ram raids. Also, we know the legislation allowing people not to get out easier or not going to jail. What's your thought patterns without, overstepping the line of what you can say of what change could occur, simple or sustainable steps that we could take over the next couple of years to try and reverse or control it? What's your thoughts around that?
Sure. So in 2019, I was a victim of aggravated robbery with my mother, which has probably played the greatest role in me sitting here today in front of you, talking a bit about that kind of stuff. And we went through an incredible journey of 3.5 years, and that was stretched because of COVID-19. The courts weren't open. But in the end, there was a day. Everything was done. The jury had found this person guilty. You have done this crime, and the maximum sentence for aggravated robbery, still on paper, is 14 years. But this person, after the cultural report, all the deliberations, got 76% discount on its sentence. See, 76%.
Why?
I don't know. That's the current government's working at the moment. But you and I are consumers as well. Even Briscoe's doesn't give you 76% off, you know? My wife and my mom, they get the Briscoe's flyer, 60% off. Yeah. They are in there. They're buying everything. But the current justice system will give you 76% off on sentence on a crime, which for the last, few times you and I have touched, the mental health problems, the society problems, the marriage, the kids, everyone is so deeply impacted. And what we say to this person is, look, it was supposed to be 14 years, but look, it's 3 years and 3 months. That's what it was. And, maybe if you behave a little bit in the jail, we'll let you out early. But guess what's going to happen? This person's going to come out, and I'm a firm belief this person's going to do it again. So why I've told you all this is I am personally a big fan of 3 strikes. So this is a idea first presented forward by ACT all the way back in 2010. And 3 strikes is not something you get to overnight. You have done some serious violent offending or sexual offending, and you've gone to court, and maybe you get your discounts, all that kind of stuff. The judge goes through that. But the judge used to formally give you your first strike. It's on the record now. So you go do your time, you've come out, and for whatever reason, you haven't changed yourself. You've gone and done serious offending, violent offending or sexual offending. But now we get to 3 strikes. But Lawrence, can you appreciate the fact it's going to take 8 to 10 years to get to the point where now the judge has to sit there and go, mate, you're on your 3rd strike, or female, if it is, you're on your 3rd strike. You have done some serious harm to my community. I'm going to send you to the maximum sentence. Surely even the current government can appreciate that, who unfortunately, when it came in power, got rid of 3 strikes. We already had people who were receiving the strikes, obviously, under the previous national government, which ACT was in support of, and it was working. The judges were giving these strikes out to create this protection, So, for example, this person, I know a little bit of history, who robbed me. He's done a lot of this stuff. If he would have been issued his strikes appropriately this time, he would have got the full 14 years, not the 3 years and 3 months. So 3 strikes is very, very important. The other thing I want to touch on is youth crime. That is very particularly subject I want to explore more. If I can come into Parliament, I can get a little bit more data, a little bit more stand in front of me, but also have an ability to change some of the legislation. With the rise in aggravated robberies and the ram rates, the biggest issue has been there's been a complete shift, and I'm sure being a member of community, you can see it as well. There's been a shift from over 18 crime to under 18 for one reason, because nothing happens to these kids. The threshold for detention, the threshold for going to a locked facility is very, very high. But if that does get to the stage, say if they've done 20 ram rates, now 30, they're going to a facility run by Oranga Tamariki, which just doesn't have the tools to deal with these. And then we can use the term kids because they're under 18, but these are grown men who've done some serious crime. I can show you the video. Maybe you saw it on LinkedIn. I'll show you the video of my last burglary. These are guys who've got power tools and they're cutting my door off the hinges. This is organized crime. It doesn't matter if they're 16 or 17, So ACT says that, we need to recognize the fact that the dial has shifted a little under the current government. And it's not nice to think, look, we've got to send a 16-year-old, 17-year-old to a proper facility. But the need of the hour is we can't send them to Oranga Tamariki facilities. They're not fit for it. They don't even have locks. I'm sure you saw that stuff that happened in Christchurch in Auckland about a month ago. These kids broke out of these facilities, jumped on the roof, and then they gave them buckets of KFC to bring them down, which sends such a wrong message. You're going to do crime. We're going to put you in a facility, that maybe or has locks or doesn't get checked. And then if you jump on the roof, throw a tantrum, we'll give you KFC. Sends such a wrong message. And have a think about what it makes a victim feel. A victim is sitting at home, reading all of this and just go, man, this, what the hell's going on with my country,
But what's the challenge to you saying that, yes, I understand three strikes. I'm personally in support of 3 strikes.
Can I just add one more thing, Lawrence, before we move on? So around youth crime. So one of the things as a victim and being around the community that's been victimized a lot, obviously want recognition for the fact that the 15 to 17-year-olds, just under 18, are doing the crime, but they must be detained. They must be detained properly. They must be reformed properly. We can't just send them home. because home is such a dysfunctional setup, which has obviously triggered them to do the crime. So one of the key policy, and remember, we talked about policy. Don't have to like me, maybe just block the video, just listen to stuff. You don't like my face. One of the key policies for ACT is to build a facility for the worst of the 200 criminals in this country, but run by corrections, not Oranga Tamariki. Corrections knows how to keep the worst offenders in this country under lock and also work on their, reforming them, all that kind of stuff. But we can't send them to a little cute kiddie jail which has no locks. But
yeah. Because my challenge to you is what is your stand on sending kids or youth offenders to jail doesn't resolve the issue, because the issue starts earlier and it starts at home and everything else. And they're going to come out and it's still going to happen. Because that's a big place we see at the moment, and that's where the community goes. Because there's two sides of it, right? There's the perception, or there's not the perception, there's the community that sees the violence, has been impacted by the violence and doesn't want the violence and goes, okay, put them behind a cage door and never let them out. But then you get the other side and going, hey, that doesn't resolve the issue. The person going to come out, they're not going to be a better human being, right? We want to live in a society that we have good human beings, fundamentally, right?
Of course, yeah.
What's your view on a person that comes to you and goes, sending them to jail is not going to resolve it. We're missing the boat there. Where do you go with that?
So, that's the term ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, right? So being a victim, you want immediate relief. You want an ability to have a piece of paper and say, these are the 60. So this is what police tells us. In the Waikato, 60 of the worst offenders are doing bulk of the crime, and if every now and then someone new does it, they peel them away quickly. Yeah. The services work. But these 60 have come from repeated third, fourth generation dysfunctional families now, right? And for the purposes of a 1 hour podcast, we can't dabble too much into how you and I could change society. Yep. But I think this is where Karen Shaw, she's our list MP, she does amazing commentary around what Oranga Tamariki needs to be doing around kids right now. These are 6 to 13-year-old who are quite vulnerable. And I don't know if you're aware of it, but the current government has this policy of, with the help of Oranga Tamariki, uplifting kids who are in care of, say, a Pakeha family, Indian family, whatever you want to call it, uplifting them and saying, no, they must go to a Maori family if they're Maori kids, which I think it's wrong. If care is being made available, the kids are happy, that's not a good way to try and social engineer society. If these kids who are so unfortunate to be in a position where their own parents, their grandparents can't look after them, if they're going to loving families and getting the care, we should allow that. We shouldn't force them to go into maybe potentially another dysfunctional family. But Karen does some really good commentary around it. It's a place I haven't explored myself. And, this is the thing, I'm putting my hand up to be a list MP. This is what list MPs do. They are issues driven. Yeah. So my focus is very much around getting the worst of the offenders locked up. These are youth offenders. The over 18 ones locked up for even longer if they're going to do the crime. Because the thing is, they don't have to be scared of me. Sitting here today saying all this kind of, just don't do the crime. It's that simple. Don't do the crime. Don't hurt someone. Don't ruin someone's business, someone's livelihoods. You don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. But, ACT obviously very strongly. I don't know if you saw the stuff yesterday. David has come out and say, look, we're going to slash half of MBIE because wastage in all our government departments is incredible. And then the Labour and the Greens come out and go, we need more taxes. ACT says, why do we need more taxes? We just got to stop the wastage that is happening on so many levels. And I'll give you one example of it. Remember, and I told you I'll come back to it. See, this is the politician in me now. I remember stuff. I told you in September 2019, Stuart Nash stood, nice photo, 500 fog cannons. Yeah. Fog cannons, the current government loves them. I don't know why they love it so much. I think the only purpose they serve is if you're having a poorly run 80s themed party where you need a bit of fog. Otherwise, they do nothing. Yep. If you have a fog cannon in your business, you triggered it during the robbery, it makes the criminal more panicky. It makes you want them hurt you faster. And you've seen them now probably in the videos. They're running into the businesses at an alarming rate, but now with weapons as well, because they know you have that button that you're going to press, or you have the remote you're going to press. So that 500 fog cannon milestone was celebrated. Somehow it gave us protection, but it didn't. It was COVID-19 that did it. And now last year, and in between, I don't know if you remember, we went through quite a few police ministers. There's quite a few, and there's a short podcast. We can't name them all. But Ginny Anderson, who's now the police minister, she celebrated 500 fog cannons being installed. And I was thinking, hang on a second, we've done this milestone. That was in September 2019. So if those 500 fog cannons didn't give us the protection, they said, and guess who's paying for that? You and I are paying for
Taxman.
it. Guy is paying for it. I hope Guy realizes he's paying for fog cannons. He goes, I just want to help record podcasts. Why am I paying for fog cannons?
Yeah.
But now they're going to expand that scheme to 3,000 fog cannons. We're going to tape fog cannons together, and it's still not going to do anything. Till we look into why they're doing it again and again, but lock them up for now. Give the protection to society. Then we can look at some 5-year, 10-year, 15, 20-year policies around, why do we keep ending up in this situation?
Yeah, so true. Let's get on to the last point. I know we're coming up with a bit of time. Cost of living. I know it's something that's important to yourself. You talked about immigration and everything else. What's your direction and position and thoughts around cost of living?
So I was
just going to say, as we are in a crisis at the moment across New Zealand.
So look, it's quite easy to sit back and say, it's a cost of living. Let's put $150 for 3 weeks in your pocket, because that's what the current government did, and it did nothing. If anything, it probably made inflation worse.
Yep.
You've gone and now thrown more money into an already overrun, heated economy, which has been overheated by the government for putting too much money into the economy. But for me, the short amount of time I've spent with ACT, I circle back to RMA, right? One of the biggest problems is rental situation. There's not enough houses. The houses are too expensive. But we've got RMA, which just gets in the way of any development. People can object to the tiniest of things, and things are slowed down for 6, 12 months, 18 months, sometimes up to 5 years. So we've got to look at the RMA. We've got to look at ways how we're going to make housing cheaper. Everything revolves around it. And you're in South Auckland sometimes as well.
Yep.
I'm sure you've seen it. Hamilton's got that problem, and Rotorua. We've got hundreds and hundreds of families living in this temporary accommodation. The current government came in and said they're going to build 100,000 houses, but I think they forgot RMA is going to get in the way, but now they've had 5 years of it. You would think they will fix it, but the new changes they are proposing are not good enough. And our current list MP, Simon Court, does some amazing commentary around, we got to get rid of RMA. We got to make it easier for people to build their schools, their houses, the hospitals, the dams, everything that needs to be the needs that are going to make this country productive. It has to be on productivity. We can't just keep giving people more benefits or one-off money. We've got to look at how we're going to build more greater highways. And the Greens get very upset about it. And I don't know why, but one of their reels came into my Instagram the other day, and they were crying and, making a song and dance around, ACT and National proposing more highways. But hey, fact of the matter is, we got to land containers of stuff effectively at Tauranga or Auckland, and we've got to move it at a good speed in an effective way. That's the kind of things you need to solve cost of living. We can't just keep taking government money and redistributing it. We can't just say, look, let's put the taxes up. That doesn't solve anything. Brings productivity down even more. So we've got to look at it from a productivity way. How are we going to actually empower the people, make them more productive, and get more money in their pockets? One of the key other policies of ACT, which I'm a big fan of, is reducing taxes. This is personal tax, you and I. Reducing it from the current confusing system to just a 2-tier. So 17.5% up to 70K. That puts 2.5K back in your pocket. Your money does not need to go to Wellington and then filter through like the 1,000 layers of bureaucracy that leaves you cents in the dollar. So let's leave the money in people's pocket. People are pretty smart. They will figure out how to keep their money, how to reinvest it, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So a couple of things just on that, right? You speak about resolving the housing dilemma and the red tape and the bureaucracy around that. I'm fully in support of that. But that doesn't change the effect on the cost of living from a mom and dad sitting that's rented. And we also have a society that's lifetime renters and a society that's never going to afford a house. We have a lot of migrants that come over here, happy to be in this country, and unfortunately, because of that, they didn't have the stepping stone and the average house price of $1 million. They're going to rent for the rest of their lives and content and happy to. Building more houses isn't going to resolve naturally their cost of living crisis. There might be this perception that the housing market and the play up there is for the rich and the up and coming, the rest of it. But me sitting at the bottom, it's not going to affect. It's not going to have any benefit to me. How's naturally building more houses going to affect the person at the bottom, or infrastructure going to affect the mom and dad that's struggling with cost of living to give their kids sandwiches for school?
Yeah. So remember, I said to you, policy.
Yeah.
It's all about the policy. It's okay to sit there and go, here's a situation. Let's just get upset about it. But if you look at the policy, right, somehow under this government, we've come under this sort of chain of thought that it's not okay to have more than one house. Because that's how New Zealand has supplied housing, right? We obviously have big government housing projects, but also a big part of it is the mum and dad investors who have been in a fortunate position to sort their lives, or have hit the right cycle, the property cycle, and provided one or two more homes. But you look at all the policies that have come under the current government that's put more pressure on these people who have that one or two more rentals available. One of the key ones is the interest deductibility.
Yep.
So this is how you got to think, Lawrence. It's quite easy for the current government at the time to come, we don't like these people who own more than one or two houses. We're going to take the interest deductibility away. But what does that do? Put the rent up next morning. That's what it does. In my parents' case, it put it up at $30 straight away.
Yeah.
And that has an impact on the mum and dad. And that's what I'm trying to say to you today in the podcast. Look at the policy. Don't worry about who's coming in front of the camera and have a think about what's going to flow and effect going to be of this policy. And I can give you other examples, around a lot of the stuff around healthy home standards that has been pushed onto private rental providers, but the government housing still hasn't done any of those improvements. It's all good to sit here and think we need really good, stuff around the house, make it healthy and all that kind of stuff. All of that's going to push the price up. It's got to come from somewhere. Were the changes too fast maybe? That's a question you got to explore. Could we maybe do it over 5-6 year stages instead of giving them a year and a half or two? I think it was 2 years they gave them in the end. But all of that's going to push the rental up. It will keep going up.
And it got extended because the government fell behind.
Of course.
Yeah.
And their own housing still hasn't done it. My parents have done it. They're age 65. They've done it. But the rental went up. And also, the most important, I would like to think, and you and I are immigrants, immigration is the big cog in the wheel that keeps this country going. And after COVID-19, we've taken far too long to let skilled people back in this country. And during the time, we were losing them. They were going to UK, Australia, and all that kind of stuff. And, I visited a couple of the factories. So we went to this powder coating factory. This is on the tour. We went to this powder coating factory in Tauranga, who picked up this business from receivership a few years ago, 5 staff, and now they've grown it to 35 staff. And I said, well, who are the key people in the business? He said, Filipinos. Like without, he didn't even hesitate. It's like, it's my 11 Filipino staff who do all this heavy, that kind of stuff. They're incredibly skilled, but then he also shared the problems they had around, yes, I've got a work permit for these guys, but these are family men. They need to bring their wife and kids here. And that was a really, really draining process for this company. How to help these people, how to get them housing, that was your question as well. And that was the same in Hamilton, this factory we visited, who was making wheelbarrows, sheds, all that kind of stuff here. So stuff not being imported from China or from America. Stuff made here by Kiwi hands, being sold to Kiwis. And all of their factory staff was Filipino. Again, so immigration is a big part of how we're going to make this country keep moving, keep delivering stuff, keep producing stuff, pick the fruits, pick the vegetables, all that kind of stuff's got to keep going. We can't pay someone $35 an hour. We're not that rich a nation, $35 an hour to pick some cucumbers and the kiwi fruit. Everything sort of has to balance out. Otherwise, we've got to be prepared to what my mom saw the other day. She found a single mango for $29 at an Asian supermarket. And she said, when we get on your MP salary, can you shout me a $29 mango? But obviously this mango came from overseas. But yeah. Does that make sense to you, Lawrence?
It does.
Yeah.
There'll be more questions, and I know we don't have much time to get into that. But there's just one more thing I want to go on about, because it's just announced this tax one, right? The 17.5% tax up at 70K, and then it's 28%. Sorry, 28%.
But these are all in stages.
Yeah.
Nothing happens overnight.
Yeah, correct. But the challenge I have to you is, I understand the tiered system, and it's like 5 tiers or something like that around the tax at the moment, and it can be confusing. One thing is I'm in support of is I want to challenge on is that initial tier of non-tax for a certain value. So I fundamentally understand the reason it would have been stood up for. It could be a student, it could be someone coming off and is doing part-time work, and therefore they're not giving their tax. And I think it's like I can't remember, it's first 20K or something around like that, they get no tax. By implementing this system now, it means you get taxed for every dollar, whether I'm working 1 hour a week or I'm doing my 40 hours or 100 hours, depending on how crazy you're working. And what do you think to that small community, that first tiered system only on this, is the impact around this?
So I just want to correct you on something. I think no one's tax free currently.
No, in the first portion of your tax.
To $10,000 is 10%, isn't it?
I would have to double check on that one.
I've looked into it. Yeah, it's 10%.
Oh, the new tax. Sorry, there was a lot. A lot.
But also, like you said yourself, these are students. These are low income earners. There's a lot of government top ups. In many ways, these are working for families, these are student allowances, all that kind of stuff. But ACT very specifically, so this is us dabbling into the green side of things. We have a system here called the ETS, which is raising currently about $1.2 billion. And at the moment, the current government is using it as corporate welfare. So you saw the announcement, NZ Steel, which is an Aussie-owned company, incredibly profitable. But for whatever reason, the government's going in there and going, oh, look, stop burning coal, get some electric furnaces, and we'll give you, I think it was 130 million. There's no need for that.
Yeah.
These companies are very profitable. Set them a target of a 3, 5, 10-year transition, and they will get to it. And they want to get to it anyway because they want to promote and sell the product in a certain way. But what ACT says is that ETS money is Kiwis' money. It's my money, it's your money, and needs to come back to us in proportion to, if you're a taxpayer. So those low-income people will get that money back. So if you're taxing the ETS, should come back to Kiwis instead of going into some fancy stuff, some climate change ministers dreamed up, I want to see this and that happening. It should come back to Kiwis if we've taxed it in the first place. And if the ETS is that great, maybe we should look at putting it up. But I'm sure everyone's going to say, no, we don't want to give more towards this environmental stuff. So it has to be in proportion. And yes, we're saying, 17.5%, but their money will come back to them, But what it will benefit the most. So this is the mum and dad, you've said that a few times. The mum and dads are sitting in that 40 to 70K or sitting in that 70 to 100K, and there was a time when 70K was a lot of money, but currently it's not. So those people will get immediate relief. They will drop that 2%, 3%, 5% potentially in tax. It leaves money in their pocket every week, and then hopefully they're smart enough to maybe use it in investment, save it towards a first home deposit and all that kind of stuff.
Thanks for that, Ash. Look, we're coming up at the end of today's time, and we can go on to more and everything else. And to anyone that's listening or watching, you can find out more about yourself as the time comes up to the coming up to the elections in a couple of months' time. Where can we find you? Where can we find more about you? How do we reach out? Anyone else that has a challenge? Anyone that disagrees with something we've said today, or as we do in New Zealand, we want to stand on top of the mountain and shout down. I'm sure someone's going to do that off the back of this show. But where can they find you to challenge you? Let's say that.
So there's a couple of things. You said you followed me on LinkedIn.
Yep.
My key thing is never to back down from an argument, right? I love debating, but only to a point.
Yep.
So I'm very easy to find. You can find me on LinkedIn, obviously. But one other thing I want to clarify for your audience also is my birth name is Himanshu Parmar. Ash is just what everyone calls me.
Yeah.
And it creates a bit of confusion. And on LinkedIn, obviously, it says Himanshu bracket Ash Parmar. So you look me up on the ACT website, from there. But also my Facebook page for the campaign is going to be there. It's under my legal name, Himanshu Parmar for ACT. So you can find me there. And on LinkedIn, just message me. I love talking and debating. But like I said, to a point, if you're not going to kind of understand my point, I'm only going to take so much time to understand your point. But my first thing to do is debate. Let's debate this. Let's actually have a civil chat. What do you think? And, and then I can maybe put my point forward. So, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for that so much for the Ash. And to everyone else, thanks for coming over again to another episode of the Wolf Country podcast. I hope you learned a lot around Ash Parmar, around what he stands for as an individual, his story, and obviously his path as an ACT candidate. Nothing we said on the show here is is driving towards a political party or to stand or say, hey, look here, you've got to vote for Ash. But I thought I'd bring Ash on as actually my very first politician ever on my show.
I will always be able to claim I was the first politician.
And the reason being is I've never wanted to have politicians before, because I felt that, like we spoke about earlier, is that part of a politician that takes never has the freedom to have what they wanted to say. And knowing your story for the last 20 years, I wanted to talk more about your story, knowing that you speak freely about that, and then a little bit about the politics. And that's why I was excited about bringing on your show. But to everyone else, again, thanks for coming over to the Wolf of Country podcast. Hope you learned a little bit today about what we stand for, about Ash, the ACT Party, and how we're trying to make a change in this country, irrespective of what colour you're looking for in a couple of months. And hopefully we can make a bit of a difference. But as always, thanks so much, and hope to see you again.